the cloud. Okay. So, hello, everybody. So today we're going to have a cool new talk. The recording is going, and I'm here. This is Micah Bloomberg and also Cecile Tamara from Silicon Valley Global News, and we're interviewing Emma from Digitalax. Hello, Emma.
Hi, Micah. Hi, Cecile. How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
Great, welcome. We prepared a little bit of a slide deck. I'll turn it off for just a second. So I don't know, why don't we start with the slide deck? That might be even easier. Let's go back and turn that back on, share the screen. This is really fun. Okay, so why is this talk really exciting? So I was really excited about when I heard what Emma was doing. So I'm an enthusiast of virtual reality and neuroscience and deep learning and all these different ways to use blockchain. And I saw an artist a tilt brush artist who's really famous. Her art is amazing, and I follow her on social media. And she's been doing tilt brush art for years. And all of a sudden, she says, I sold my first artwork on Rarible with NFTs for $22,000, and like her at that point, like it was world changing for her. And everybody in the tilt brush community on Facebook was like, "Wow, that's mind blowing!" And they're like, "Congratulations!" And this is like, she's like this epic artist that's just, she's world famous. She's in one of our slides. I can show you. This is Anna. I don't want to mispronounce her last name, but Anna was saying that her first NFT sold for what in the U.S. is $24,000. And at this point, this is like sort of the big convergence of NFT and blockchain with virtual reality and art that people have been talking about, I would say, since the first I heard of it, this convergence of technologies, was at a talk at GDC. That was it was about ERC 1155 and how you could receive an item from a game and you could keep that item. So you wouldn't have to give up, like if you play the game, you play Legend of Zelda and you get a sword, you don't get to keep it. When the game is over, you have to leave the sword in the game. But if you were to get that item with an NFT, that would mean you owned it and you could take it and you keep it even after you leave the game. And so that idea that you can tie a 3D asset or 3D art or 3D fashion, is in the case of digital fashion, is what brings Emma and Digitalax to us today. So hello, Emma. Do you want to give us an overview of maybe from your perspective of digital fashion and 3D art and the convergence of NFT and virtual reality?
Sure. Yeah, I guess it's a very broad-ranging topic, but to kind of break it down, I guess to start with the NFT side, like exactly what you described, Mike, it's very much the idea of how do you kind of attach authenticity and verification and digital ownership to an item. And that can be like a purely digital item, or it could even be kind of a physical hybrid, like digital physical hybrid item. And how can you kind of attach some ownership to that? And that's really where this idea of using a blockchain, or particularly in this case, in a large amount of cases, the Ethereum network, to kind of stamp on chain this authentication and ownership. So it's something that I'd say it's been around for a number of years, but it's really taken off in kind of the past 8 months or so. We've been very much in NFT bull run, and this has really promoted the idea, I guess, of a lot of artists moving into the space and exploring like what are NFTs and how can I use these to monetize in what I'm doing. And it's really interesting because particularly as there's a big kind of, I guess, global stage now for natively digital art, and this is a lot where VR comes in as well. And that has a big component there. I guess the kind of not a problem, but there's been a lack of like a mechanism to monetize on that or even distribute the assets in a more meaningful way to buyers. So this is, I guess, NFTs have really provided and bridged that gap. So it's been a very interesting space. I mean, myself and Digitalax, we've only been officially live in the market for around like 2.5, 3 months now. But we caught a really interesting time period to see this whole marketing industry flourish. And we really took the perspective of bringing digital fashion into the space, which again is something a little bit unique because beforehand it was very much just purely like artwork dominated. But how we saw it is digital fashion is going to play, I guess, a huge role in these live 3D industries or 3D content industries in the future, particularly, you know, gaming, VR, AR as well. And that really comes down to the idea of, you know, self-expression and identity as these kind of core human heuristics and characteristics. So it was looking at, okay, if these applications of say VR are going to be huge in the future, and that's really our conviction and what we believe, then what is kind of these sub-industries or sub-market segments that really make sense? And this is for us, digital fashion is one of those huge market segments that I guess a lot of people not overlook, but I guess they don't see so much yet, like where kind of the value is lying. So this is really what we're doing at the moment, is seeing NFTs as a major distribution channel and mechanism to attaching more value, more meaningful value to digital fashion assets. So like what you described, buyers can actually really own these items in the digital world. They can have that kind of backing behind them, I would say, and that security behind them. Which is something very interesting and unique as well when we're thinking about digital fashion, because it's all about, you know, I guess a buyer or a wearer really having an emotional experience with kind of the items that they're wearing and having more of that connection. So yeah, I'll stop there, but that's kind of the high level and our approach and yeah, what we're doing in the market at the moment.
Okay, well, so what I have on the screen here is this is a reference to the Fortnite skins, so people can sort of get an idea of you know what one application, which would be, you know, when we're talking about digital fashion, we're talking about, like, let's see if I can flip through this slide deck. We're talking about in Emma's case, we're talking about 3D models of dresses and textures. So you could have an artist who, like an actual fashion designer, who creates something that's really, you know, sort of a costume for your virtual character in one sense. And then if you go back to the idea of skins in Fortnite, which is a famous game, that means that, you know, with the aid of game engines like Unity and you know, and WebXR tools, you could take this this dress or other types of clothing, because fashion is not just dresses, and you could bring it into these games. And so what Emma's done is really interesting. Is she's designed a sort of like 3-level approach to this. The first step is about creating the sort of tying to, you know, you're tying to the smart contracts, the tokens, to the items, right? Is that, would you like to describe your 3 levels? Or
yeah, sure. Yeah, so I guess, look, how we kind of took the approach, or with our understanding, it was kind of like, well, the digital fashion industry doesn't really exist today. There's no one really doing a lot of innovative stuff within the industry. I mean, there's a number of entities that have set up, but it's very much more of like a commercial outlook and a boutique outlook of how can I just, you know, kind of provide, say, my 3D knowledge or services to creating some digital fashion assets for, say, an advertising purpose for a company. But really, when we looked at it, was, as I said, seeing how much potential is in this industry and seeing how could we actually build this industry from the ground up, and what would that look like? And really, this is where this kind of 3-layered approach came from, was looking at how could we cover all verticals to that, and what would that entail. And kind of to break that down, the three kind of layers that we saw was, number one, distribution channels. How do you actually strengthen your distribution channels of digital fashion and create a really clean and sustainable content supply chain around that? Then number two, it was looking more technically at what is kind of the, you know, more technical innovation required within the industry to actually bridge these assets, which then comes into the third layer, into application utility, which is a really important thing when you think about building an industry, or, you know, kind of creating value for the different stakeholders involved. It really all does come down to sustainable value generation, because sure, you can do something once, you know, and say create a lot of value for a lot of people, which we were really fortunate enough with our first auctions to kind of have a lot of success. But at the end of the day, if that's not a really, I guess, strongly repeatable model, and not based just of speculation, but it has to be based on kind of more fundamental kind of ideas and placeholders as well, then what does that really, you know, entail? So yeah, to go into more details, the first layer was all about the content distribution side. And this is really where NFTs came in, and what you can see on the kind of screen here. This is our marketplace, and all of these digital fashion assets, we partnered with over 30 digital fashion designers globally. They're based everywhere from Australia to US, to all places of Europe, to Africa, to Asia, to create really unique digital fashion garments that they're building these 3D softwares and completely digital. And then we listed on our marketplace for auction as NFTs. So all of these digital fashion items are minted on the Ethereum network as ERC-721 non-fungible tokens. And yeah, I can see as you're highlighting the price there, Mike, they sold for kind of huge amounts, which was for us, you know, to start with as a startup, and that kind of really big shock. We definitely weren't expecting it when we went live, but it really shows kind of this distribution channel and mechanism that NFTs provide, that say if we listed this on a normal e-commerce site, it just wouldn't have the same value behind it, which is something really interesting. And it comes down to this idea of digital ownership, and how really when a buyer is buying these items, they are, and particularly on our marketplace as well, there's a full IP assignment where they are actually kind of getting the full, you know, IP assignment and rights to these 3D files, to the actual FBX file itself, to the 3D asset, which is like a GIF, and it's really purely cosmetic at the moment. So these assets on our marketplace, they were, yeah, purely kind of from a more like digital fashion kind of cross art perspective, but it was really about proving that NFTs have definitely a strong future use case for digital goods distribution. They're able to provide this authenticity, they're able to provide this verification, and then also from a content supply chain point of view. And really what we focused on was how can you kind of streamline the idea of a digital fashion supply chain, and what does that look like? And this is where we brought in really unique aspects of this idea of fractional garment ownership, where it's how can you break down these master garments that you're seeing into their individual patterns, materials, and textures. Yeah, exactly like what you can see on the slide there. And we did a really cool proof of concept and use case with this in January, where we partnered with crypto artists in the space that actually created these patterns and materials and textures that you see in the garments. And they actually minted these on chain on the Ethereum network as separate individual NFTs. That then when the digital fashion designer actually took the patterns and they incorporated them in their master garment, and then minted another NFT on chain, the way our smart contracts worked was this master kind of digital fashion NFT could actually own the collection of those materials and patterns and textures that were incorporated within the design within the 3D software, which is a really kind of unique thing when you think about how do you provide transparency and tracking along a supply chain down to these kind of micro levels and composable levels. Because in the future, it's really about how can you allow as many artists to get involved with this, to be able to monetize on it, to be able to create a living in a future. So yeah, that was really the first stage, was this digital fashion content supply chain. And then, to not babble on too much, but the second stage was all about the technical side. and very much looking at, okay, if you have these digital fashion items, like I said, it's great, it's very pretty, they look nice, and they might have some value now, but how can you bridge this into application utility? And one of the biggest problems today, it comes down to the actual information transfer of these 3D files, is that when you create them within one software, often it's very siloed within that software,
Yeah.
and it's not a drag and drop process. So yeah, this is when we kind of went into creating a file format and looking at the interoperability side.
I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to check in with Cecile real quick. So to sort of summarize that for the way I want to summarize that, because there's different ways you can summarize it. You can say we've got the blockchain smart contracts of working with artists to make sure that their art is secure, so they can sell their stuff, and everything from their textures to their 3D to their 3D models is tracked, and so they're secure in knowing that they're going to get credited for the work. And if their work is auctioned and they contributed a texture, or someone borrowed a texture from them, then everyone in the community who is a contributor could get paid, because it's all been through that auction, because it's all been tracked. And that's the first part of your 3-part process. You started to go into Dash, which is a way to integrate these 3D models into the game engines. So Dash is a new file format that sort of, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it's really cool, and it's one of the really big reasons that I one of my really big highlights. And then the third part is the community, the player creator community, and that economy, and so in growing that economy, in a sense, it's why you're doing talking to media, so you can in growing groups and talking about what you do. It's about growing the player creator community. It's part of it. So I've been talking to Cecile Tamora. And she was just the other night talking to some teenagers in Japan about the player creator community in Japan, and the history of that. That goes back before even NFTs and blockchain. So Cecile, what can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, of course, it's a billion-dollar industry, and it's growing because it has been there. It's just like very much a part of the Japanese culture, which has been exported to other countries for a long time. And every year it keeps on improving. And when I saw the platform of Emma on how the applications could be done in this particular kind of market, I think it's quite inspiring. So they have something like this 3D presentation in 2.5, just between 2D and 3D, and a growing market for audiences watching these concerts of impositions of these characters together with live humans in a live concert. So I'm quite excited about the possible applications that Emma will have. So I was just wondering, Emma, what inspired you to go into this industry earlier? Because I understand you came from a science background or something, but I thought that both science and art might have inspired you to go into this industry. I think that's where I want to hear something about that from you, because for a young person like you, it's very, very interesting to see such passion and talent.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's it kind of, how did I get here? For me, I've always sat within the hybrid of I love the very intricate math and science side, and I've always really loved that. And then I've always had kind of a lot of it taking to the art side as well, and kind of the creativity that allows there. So I've always kind of sat within the middle, kind of jumping between these two worlds, or these like two hybrids. And so yeah, I've always really liked that, and just kind of I did a lot of kind of work last year looking at foresight, like what is the future of the industries, where do I think that society will be in 10 years, in 50 years from now, in 2100, what would that look like? And then when I kind of started looking into this more, this is where I became even more interested in gaming and VR, AR, like live 3D content, because I really just saw that this is definitely where we're headed. It's kind of inevitable, even, you know, if we're a few years off in our predictions about exactly when we're going to like land in this idea of like native digital economies. We're definitely headed there. And I think that even just last year, the whole pandemic situation kind of accelerated that a lot, and probably more than what people thought. And it's just on this trajectory. And so when I looked at this, became really excited and really interested. And this is when I started thinking about, okay, well, if this is the future, what are kind of the details of that, or what would that look like? And what are these kind of individual market segments that I think will be really big or generate a lot of value for a lot of people? And how can I help instigate that? And this is when I came across digital fashion, about being something that, for me, perfectly sat in the hybrid between like heavy technical and science from more that digital side, and then allowed for a lot of creativity and kind of that art world sense when you think about, you know, fashion, and really it has to be something that you have to express from your course. So first of all, it was, you know, loving that side, and then also just understanding that if my conviction is correct, that, you know, 3D and gaming and VR is going to be big, then I really believe that digital fashion is kind of an underlooked and undervalued industry at the moment. Because if you think about in our world today, fashion is just so ubiquitous. It's kind of like integrated into absolutely everything. It has been for thousands of years, and it will continue to be. And so if we move into this digital world, it's almost inevitable that people will start expecting that this digital fashion industry exists in the same way, or at least similar ties to what we have today in terms of access and distribution and self-expression.
Yeah. So because basically during this pandemic and after, it is projected that, you know, of course, our world will never be the same, just like as before the pandemic. Even if there was Industry 4.0, it has been leapfrogged to really change into digital transformation. And because of new technology that's coming in, like for instance, a lot of hope for self-driving cars and automation and working from home, people will always be hungry for content. So that's why I think it's very important that we have this for a start. But probably your product could also branch out, you know, into other kinds of products coming in from there. So what I saw in your in one of the write-ups or interviews that you had, you said that you wanted to help the designers have some kind of world to make this kind of sense of living for doing their talent. So I saw also that, are you planning to have a launch this month of expansion of your product, or do you have a
Yeah.
new project?
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, we started just really focusing on the designer side and the digital fashion designers, and how we could bridge them into the NFT market. And looking at that, as I said, you know, kind of a big problem when you think about scaling an industry. It's all about where is the value coming from, and how do you make that sustainable? And what we saw really was, although the NFT market is great, and I love it, and I have a lot of support for where it's going, it's a lot of it is focused on the cosmetic side, which is the art world, which is great. But when you think about digital fashion, there has to be application utility tied directly to these assets, because leaving them as kind of just artworks where that people can buy, it's more based on speculation, and there's no real like fundamental sustainable value generation to that. And that's a big problem when you think about, you know, if you really want to create livelihoods for someone, you shouldn't be creating it on a speculative front. So really what we're kind of launching and bringing into our suite of kind of what we're doing, and this is very much the layer 3 application utility side. We are launching a platform called ESPA, which is very much looking at how can these digital fashion assets be worked directly into game engines, or sorry, game and VR environments. And this is where we're launching this idea of the first indie kind of esports or mod esports, and how you can then allow this triad between, and what Michael was talking about before, was triad between, you know, players, creators or designers, and then developers to be able to work together and create value. So how can, you know, allow players to come onto this platform and be able to start earning a living and earning, you know, money and value for themselves, allow some of that and part of that to as well go to the indie developers and the modders that are kind of creating this content and showcasing it. And then how can you bring designers into this world with their, you know, digital fashion content and actually incorporate that directly into these application environments to bring identity to the players and value from that front as well. So yeah, we're very much now fully focused on an application utility and how we bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's very, very exciting. Really something to look forward to. And I could already imagine how it will be working. So probably we could like classify some possible trajectories that you have now, like one going into the NFT and the other one, the digital fashion design as a digital fashion itself, maybe as applied to social VR and other interactions that probably people can buy from you, from the environment that you made, from the just like social library that you have about designers and the stocks that you have in your inventory.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's definitely, yeah, that's definitely a future that we're looking about is how do you, you know, start kind of having the supply chain to plug into, you know, all 3D content providers. Yeah.
What I want to get back to the major topics that interest people here, in terms of if you are on the player side, if you love VR games, if you love the Oculus Quest or the the HTC Vive or the Valve Index, as a game player, you're going back to the talk of what does this mean to you? It means you get to own your digital assets. You get to keep them outside the game. You get to trade them. You could sell them if you wanted to. That it's a way to have a market, another marketplace that extends outside of your app. That and this is something to, okay, so that's the sort of player perspective. And we talked about earlier. We talked about the digital artist or digital fashion artist perspective. If you are creating fashion, if you're creating these amazing high quality 3D models of next generation fashion with amazing textures and materials, and you want to make sure that your work is protected, there's that element of it. And I think the other element of it that is very important is the developer perspective. If you want to create applications that can allow people to not only you could facilitate them a store for 3D assets, or you could create a game that allows people to bring these 3D assets into your game, so they could bring their own character modifications into your application. And there's a lot of tools, and I thought, well, maybe what might be interesting is to go over some of the tools people can use to start creating games, and maybe we could touch on a few of the platforms that already exist in WebXR. I want to mention that WebXR works with Unity, but also works with A-Frame. A-Frame is a really cool development environment, a framework that wraps around. Here we go. We got 3JS. Oh, I think I'm not sure. I think it's not. Let me go back to the screen share. That was. You could probably see it on my monitor, but let me turn the screen share back on if I can find it real quick. Zoom meeting. Let's go to share screen. So share number 2. So this is 3JS. It's 3js.org, and we have all these there's all these amazing demos that you can find. You can build applications that are 3D and they can run in VR. A-Frame is another framework, and I wanted to just sort of show that. So A-Frame is aframe.io. People are also working with a framework called, let me bring this up on the screen. This one that I'm trying to bring up is called Babylon.js. And there is actually there's actually someone has built like a WebXR app that incorporates NFTs with Babylon. And do you remember what that was called, Emma? I'm blanking on the name at the moment.
It's not Webiverse.
Oh yeah, Webiverse. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Webiverse.
Yeah, so Webiverse. It's Babylon it's Babylon JS based WebXR, and you can and it already incorporates NFTs. So you can buy the way that works. You actually buy a plot of land, sort of like Decentraland was one of the early ones, where you could buy a plot of land in virtual space and begin to build on it with A-frame. And then so Babylon JS was another take on, Webiverse was another take on it. Instead of using A-frame, which they use for Decentraland, Webiverse uses Babylon. Babylon's more of a game engine. And then another one that people might like to know about is called React 3 Fiber. So if you're a React developer, you'll really like this. And I think I might become a React developer just because this exists. Short story about me is I've been creating A-frame apps for 3 years. And A-frame apps incorporate a lot of 3JS. But when I started to see what this guy was doing with React 3 Fiber, I was like, I got to learn this, because he's making apps really, because React is really, it was sort of created to make it easier to create user interfaces, which is a lot of how I spent my time when I was building apps with A-frame. I was like making user interfaces. And in some respects, A-frame is still ahead in the VR game in terms of like having like stuff ready to go for creating VR stuff. So I can create VR stuff a little bit faster in A-frame. But the potential for React 3 Fiber is, because it doesn't abstract 3JS, is that I could turn this into a React native app, and then at that point it can run on an iPhone as a native application, or an Android as a phone as a native application, like a WebXR application. So I get all that fancy 3D, the nice user interface, and then it runs natively at full speed. So that's kind of like why I'm like, yeah, I do cool stuff, but I could run it inside a native application. I could just sort of like port my code from the web to a phone, and that's exciting. So I mean, I think that that's my driving force. But I wanted to tell people, these are some of the great tools if you are into this whole scene of bringing your 3D models into WebXR. And so there's something that Anna's working on. So far, like I mentioned, there's Webiverse, there's Decentraland. There was that talk that we heard back in, let me go back to the slides and then get the date on that talk. So this was GDC 2019 when I first heard about the idea of blockchain game development with Ethereum. And so that's when that's when I started to have discussions with people about, hey, why don't we take this A-frame stuff that I'm building and make it possible for people to bring in game items into it, and we started talking about that. And I didn't get around to it, and then like I guess about a year later, Emma comes around and she's like, I'm doing it. It's like, oh, that's awesome. That's so great. But what's really cool that Emma's working on is that, so we talked about the sort of like the first layer and the third layer. And the first layer of the platform is, is how to connect the artists with the Ethereum and to track the 3D model. And the third layer is the player creator economy. But the second layer was really why excited me the most, because what Emma's talking about has impacts that go far beyond just her company. So the Dash file format system is addressing a sort of long-standing problem in terms of how 3D models interact with game engines, to the point that you have people typically will make a 3D model creation program. Could be like Blender, 3ds Max, Maya, Cinema 4D. Those are like the big four ones. Houdini would be another one. And you might get a 3D model out of that. It could be like FBX. Usually now you can export all of them as GLTF, which is compatible with the web. but then then you have to, you need to think about, okay, well then there's also, if you're a 3D artist, you don't want to stop there. You also want to think about, doing maybe some light field rendering, and so there's OTOY, and you got to learn about, so it's not just about creating art, but then you got to render it really nicely, and then the folks at Octane have created their own render token, which is to help with the process of crypto. Do you want to explain, Emma? Do you want to explain more about render token and what you know about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I looked into it a lot last year, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate, but don't quote me too much. But it's we're kind of like a render farm in a sense, where people can buy this like RNDR or render token, and then it's kind of like the ecosystem token connecting renderers with these, kind of like better how do I say, like kind of better computer systems and machines that can actually render out these 3D files, and then it's connecting with kind of customers, just like a render farm that we kind of have today and that on the internet, but it's, I guess, more modular in the sense that it actually allows having this render token where the frames or that can actually be split up, I think, across the different like kind of, I'm not too sure, Micah, so I won't, don't quote me on this too much, but it's using crypto, I think, to like modularize where the actual file is going. So it's like part of it can be done by one of the providers, and then part of it can be done by another provider to, kind of like make it run faster or have better accessibility. But it's also about using the render token to kind of streamline the payment side. So I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I don't know too many people that are using it or how much that it's taken off, but I haven't really been following all of the updates, but I know that kind of it's a big project that Octane took forward. And I definitely see, with kind of, there's a bigger shift now into crypto and a lot of companies coming in. So probably that there'll be a lot more use of this. And, kind of definitely from our side as we're on the NFT side, and rendering is a huge challenge that we face in our pipeline. It kind of brings, I guess, more exposure in that to this kind of front, and definitely as artists moves in, it's like how that they can actually streamline their own crypto payments in NFT space into this.
So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up was because the CEO of the company that makes the render token, so that company would be OTOY, and the CEO is Jules Urbach, and he's also created, I've talked to him a few times, and he's also created an Orbex. He created an Orbex file format, and it sort of ties back into, you have a file format, and this Orbex file format was about sort of like having like a light field volumetric video sort of format for a 3D model, so like a 4-dimensional 3D model, right? So it has a time dimension. That would be the 4th dimension. So, with GLTF, it doesn't really handle, and it sort of like, I mean, I guess you can save your animations, but it's sort of like it wasn't really designed for volumetric video. So the reason I brought this up is Jules Urbach is one of those, he focuses on sort of like streamlining pipelines to optimize the bandwidth channel so that he can eventually create the holodeck, to paraphrase one way I think of what he does. And so he's worked on the issue of, okay, well, how do we create a file system for the future of 3D models? And that connects to what's really great about Dash, which is Emma's file format system, which uses sort of like there's a novel term that I believe Emma coined, material instance segmentation, and there's opinionated logic in there that is going to look at those textures and maybe you can describe this better than me, but it's basically going to me, it sounds like, and I could be wrong, it sounds like you're maybe and this is not in the description, but I'm guessing that maybe you're doing a fourier the way you're doing a Fourier transform of a 3D model could be one way to do it. It could be is to use basically the to take a snapshot of each angle around the item, like a 2D snapshot. And that 2D snapshot, I think it's like a Fourier projection hypothesis or something. It represents one angle from like the center of that 3D model or something like that. But if you combined multiple snapshots around a 3D model and do a process of, summation of some kind, that I guess is analogous to photogrammetry, which people, you take snapshots of a 3D object in the real world, and you from different angles, and you combine them together, and you can get a 3D model out of that. But you can do the same thing for capturing a snapshot of a digital item, and then you can encode each snapshot with a Fourier transform, and get basically the fastest compression, or the greatest compression possible for that 3D model. But if you do it in the way that Emma's proposing, and I'm paraphrasing, it's like, if you create a 2D snapshot, but then you compare the 2D snapshots and the 3D recreation to the original capture, to see if you're getting the original capture as rendered by the game engine's API. Or by the 3D model engine's API. So Emma's technology works with the actual API in which the art of the art tool. So you have a 3D modeling tool, you create a file, and it renders something that looks a certain way in the environment in which it was rendered. And so this process that Anna's outlining is like, well, hey, wait a second, we can create a compressed representation of it, but then we can also compare the compressed representation that we're creating on the fly to the original in the environment in which it was meant to be created, so that we can make sure that what we're outputting is a match from all angles to the original thing, with the right lighting and everything, and the right materials. And then you can do this so that you have something that is basically able to take 3D models from any program and sort of create like a universal process, or universal file format process, to encode them as Fourier transforms, and you have the best compression that will go a long ways to allowing us to bring really high-end 3D models, including, I mean, we have to remember, like with where it's going, that with Unity, the 3D models are they're small. They're not super high resolution compared to the fields of architecture and CAD modeling. Like if you create like a car, that's when the 3D models get massive. So if we're talking about any kind of gains in terms of compression, that's going to mean big things, because there is like a new, for 3JS, and I recently talked to a company in a previous article. There's for 3JS there are tools that let you bring in CAD-sized art, so full architecture and files into 3JS. So you can literally look at the highest resolution stuff. You can import it into the web browser. And when you have better compression, that's exciting, because that means that it's going to run more performantly. It means we get closer to being able to have these high quality 3D models in a virtual reality experience that runs well, that's performant. That's exciting. That's a big deal. And that's I guess my paraphrase description of Emma's second the second part of what she's doing, which is, if you've heard all this from the top, I mean, to me, that just like there's a massive amount of stuff that's stacked together. That's a part of what Emma's doing. I mean, that's a lot. That's for anybody. Like any one of those topics is, I don't know. Someone else. I don't want to talk forever, but someone else take over.
No, I was saying it is a lot, but it's really like how we looked at it was it's about building an industry. And when you're taking that approach, it's very different than, looking at a single project or a company. It's about how, kind of building up all these verticals across different areas that then integrate and lean on each other to kind of create this fuller structure. But yeah, the layer 2 and what you're talking about with Dash Micro, it is very much about, how do you kind of, I guess the information transfer that we see it in the industry today, it's fundamentally flawed in kind of the logic behind it. And it's really the way it's done is, I wouldn't say dumb logic, but kind of lazy logic around the approach of how do you, take a file or a piece of information from one home environment or application or siloed environment, and then how do you transfer that into another software application. So this is really what we were looking at was how do you actually really take a step back and look at the core components that are required to kind of allow information transfer at a higher fidelity to actually occur. And this is really where it's the idea of how can you capture as much information about the source file or the original asset as possible. How can you look at it from different dimensions and different angles that you described to ensure that the data that you're capturing, first of all, is full and complete, but also true, and how can you actually verify that? And then how can you inject opinionated logic into this kind of broader architecture and broader system to also ensure that the information that you're outputting actually has relevance to the application environment that it's being deployed into, because that's really important as well when you think about transfer of information. If it knows the environment and the end environment or the output towards kind of where it's going or being deployed, that can change a lot around what kind of the hierarchy of the information is, or what information should be maintained from the source, how much should be maintained. And that's really what the, I guess, broader kind of scope of Dash is bringing these concepts that maybe that we think about should be kind of a given or guarantee. When you think about transferring information, it kind of be like, okay, well, this is kind of a checklist that we should have. But really when you start looking under the hood of this industry and the broader kind of 3D industry, it's a lot of kind of missing steps that aren't there. And this is scaled up to kind of bigger problems and political problems that we probably come across within gaming and VR. It's really all breaks down to like the misinformation and miscommunication at this fundamental file level. So this is really what we're bringing forward with Dash, is about how do you gain kind of as much context, I would say, around the source information. And then how can you ensure that that's being deployed and into a relevant output application, and it has opinionated logic on the application environment and its final location, which is incredibly important when you really think about achieving the right purpose and the job of what these files are meant to be doing.
Cecile, did you have a follow-up question on that?
As of now, in your file for the fashion items that you have about 19 items that are there. Is it gonna be increasing soon?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, how we looked at it, like I said, was really the first stage was running these auctions to prove out the distribution channel. And we'll definitely be bringing a lot more into this marketplace, as I said, with the esports and gaming kind of layer 3 side of these player creator economies. We have some really exciting kind of news that we'll be releasing soon on that with the end of the month, and how we're kind of partnering with different indie devs and modders in the community and having our digital fashion assets incorporated within that. So we're releasing more on that, but really that's how we're moving forward in scaling this out, is each fashion item that we bring forward, it will have direct application utility into specific kind of graphic environments.
Yeah, so that's really great to look forward to. So please tell us if, for instance, I would like to get a token, buy a token from you, from Digitalax. What should I do?
Sure. So there's a kind of a decentralized market called Uniswap, and that's where we're traded at the moment. And anyone can kind of go and buy a token, but they've got to have a bit of the crypto sense in terms of having a wallet and these kind of things. And that's the same for our marketplace. It's all priced at the moment in Ethereum, which I think, before it was a little bit more close to just the heavy crypto community, but after GameStop and all these big events and Elon Musk, I think it was today, buying 1.5 billion in Bitcoin on his Tesla balance sheet. Yeah, I think it's going to become much more ubiquitous.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think the environment of the Ethereum is more dynamic than Bitcoin, actually. So it's gonna lead you to, more applications, maybe because the highway that it offers is a lot more, especially for the products that you have. But then, of course, because of the announcement today, it was happening. A lot of things will be happening on the blockchain, and a lot of people who are influential will be coming in to place their bets on it. So I think it's
Oh,
good news for you.
I just
Micah?
want to say, Ethereum has hit an all-time high. It's over 1,700, right? And then blockchain, or sorry, Bitcoin, excuse me, Bitcoin has hit its all-time high, which is over 47,000 today.
Yeah,
These are just insane numbers. And like Emma said, it's part of the reason may have been the news that Tesla had invested 1.5 billion. The news that came out today, but that is just sort of mind expanding. Emma, did you have any idea that it was going to go up to 47?
Well, I guess, look, for a number of years, people always saying, like, when's Bitcoin going to hit 100K? And then even, 1 million. And I think, I mean, no one can predict where it's going to go. And, it could just retrace completely tomorrow to like 9,000 or something. We really don't know. But I think that there's a lot of positive sentiment around crypto at the moment. And people are really kind of, I guess, likening or really taking, I guess, more positively towards the values of what kind of cryptocurrencies stand for in terms of the idea of decentralization, really being able to own your own money and have more control over that and not rely, on bigger banks and the normal fiat system. So I definitely think that even though it's an all-time high today, I don't think that it's, in the future we'll be saying that 47 and 1700 are all-time highs for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think there's a long way to go.
yeah. We still don't
Right.
know actually.
Right. Yeah. No. All-time high. Not the right. Not the optimal word usage. But it's the latest. The peak so far. So I
Yeah.
guess that,
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Exactly. A lot to go.
So there's a lot more to discuss, and we can save some of that for future episodes. But going back to since this first talk was really about focusing on virtual reality, I think that when I started diving into the second layer of how Dash works, the material instant segmentation, the Fourier transform compression, I started connecting it to some previous research and some new research that I've been looking into different ways that other people have been trying to, all of our phones have LiDAR, or the iPhones have LiDAR now. Soon all the phones will have LiDAR in the coming years. But the idea is that, the last article that I wrote on SVGN News was about, 2 articles ago, we got to interview the folks at Varho, and they had announced they had their own LiDAR RGB fusion algorithm, basically that combines the LiDAR as a time of flight sensor, and it gives really good depth information, but the texture information is not as highly detailed as like an RGB camera, right? But if you could use some code to combine the two, then you could start to basically match the high resolution textures from your RGB with the high resolution depth to create something that's beyond both. And so we're talking about real-time 3D model creation when you point your phone at the world. And people are doing it right now on their iPhones, and it's they're not see what you're seeing on Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a website where you can upload 3D models. What you're seeing is what 3D artworks looks like before you add in the LiDAR fusion algorithms, the LiDAR RGB fusion algorithms, because what happens afterwards is we are going to basically, the computer's going to recognize the world, and then it's going to create 3D models. And then that brings us back into how do we track these 3D models that, with NFTs, and bring them into our games with virtual reality. And so the real world, it's basically, we're at this point in history when what's about to happen is creating 3D models is going to open up. So it's not just a few people who can do it, who can make high quality 3D models. It's basically like, it's going to be sort of like democratized. So anyone can easily create fantastic 3D models with something as simple as a phone, because of the convergence of technologies that, the deep learning and 3D model rendering and LiDAR and all these things. So that changes the world in terms of, augmented reality and virtual reality experiences that people are having. And being able to store these 3D models in a compressed way is where something like the Dash file format can play a big role. There's different ways to do it. You can do it with instant segmentation with opinionated logic. You can do it with deep neural networks. There's lots of research and great examples. And then this also sort of like affects the future of neuroscience in a way, because some of the most exciting stuff about neuroscience is, we can measure signals from the brain, from an organism's brain, and then we can try to correlate that with what the organism is doing. If you're studying a mouse, what is the organism doing? What is their brain activity? So that's the study of neural correlations. And so when you have, when you have the ability to track, semantically segment everything that's around someone, then you could, and you have the ability to sort of like, this is a longer topic, and we have to go into this another time, but the point is that we can, there is a possibility to create brain-computer interfaces or with as an outcome of discovering next generation neural correlations between what we're capturing with new ways of medical imaging, and combining that with new ways of semantically organizing the 3D world that we live in. And in the middle of that is the sort of VR ecosystem, the player creator ecosystem, all the people participating in creating 3D models with their phones, creating fashion with the help of AI, being able to buy and sell their fashion with the help of digital AX in a reliable way. And so it just really, I really appreciated the fact that Emma's company is sort of like at the center of this future and connects to all the different parts of the global industry in a way. And so that's why I said, well, let's have a talk about the virtual reality, but I want to hear from the folks in Emma's group. Emma, do you want to go ahead and promote your group, and we can ask them, what they want to hear more of, so we can dive deeper.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think my community loves kind of all of these different topics. So anything around, like metaverses and VR and digital economies, I think that always is really interesting. But yeah, I think in the Discord group, which we have at Digitalax, this is kind of where we're going to be bringing a lot more of the community to suggest topics and kind of ask different questions, and then we can incorporate them into this talk series and answer them here.
Great. Let's get that. Let me put that on the. I guess I can share my screen and.
Sure.
I want to say how can we. Cecile, what did you say?
Oh, probably we can make a plan for the next episode. And you were saying earlier that maybe people who are supporting Emma may want to also share how they work, how they synergize their work around that. So, and Emma also said that maybe it's good to get suggestions from the crowd as to what topics will we be talking about that they would be interested in. Because anyway, after all, later on they'll be asking some questions. So I understand that what we're talking about involves a huge, it connects to a complexity of different applications and fields. So there's really a lot to talk about. So maybe we should make a good plan. Like maybe a while ago, Emma was also mentioning about the VR live, live broadcast, which got me interested recently because we could see the projection of 3D models on the stage with the real life modeling and trying to do some of their some concerts and some drama with the humans, which is becoming very popular in Japan. And that at the back there are some voice actors who are really speaking. And I was wondering, I said, how come this is an animation which is projected as the same size as humans on stage and interacting with humans? How come that they have their voice, the way they speak is being synced? And of course, that is the tracking and also the sensors and probably the LiDAR that Micah was saying, but they're already applying it now. And so that's kind of amazing. But I think it relates to Emma's product also because that's a future market since now it's only on some areas, but I think in the world there will be a huge interest on that. So I think it's something very interesting to discuss as well next time. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, Emma, are you doing all of this on your own? You must be a very busy person.
Yeah, I mean it's a no sleep kind of role. 24/7, 7 days a week. Yeah, not too much. I mean, I'd say it's a fully immersive experience, which is, getting me prepared for what I'm talking about in terms of, 3D immersivity in the future. So, but I love it. And there's a lot of passion behind it. And I think that if there wasn't, then we couldn't do what we're doing. I mean, it's a very small team at the moment. It's really myself doing a lot across all areas. And then we have just a small development team as well. And then, from more kind of like community managers on that side. So we're definitely a startup and kind of spread across everywhere, but we're moving fast and scaling up, I think, more and more quickly each day as we kind of branch out and continue in our development process. But yeah, no sleep comes with this. So you can probably see the dark kind of bag in my eyes.
It's not yet really that bad. It's still really negligible.
Yeah.
So we're about to go, but I just want to say if people want to find, we'll share some links in the description. People can look up Digitalax or Digitalax on Twitter, and there's a Discord link that you can find just by scrolling through the Digitalax messages on Twitter. You'll find the Discord link, and then you can join Emma's Discord, and that's it for today. So so we want to hear more. Some feedback on what people would like to hear about, and so we can dive even deeper into the things that we've talked about today in future calls, and maybe even meet some of Emma's team if they want to come on. And you guys in the Discord can join the discussion if you want. Just let us know. So so thanks very much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Cecile.
Yeah, thank you, Micah, and thank you, Emma. It's very nice to really have a conversation with you, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Cecile. Lovely to be here.
Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, have a great day.